Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Bill Keck, and I'm chair of the Academic Health Department Learning Community and the Council on Linkages, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's Academic Health Department Learning Community webinar. Before we begin, however, Janelle, if you'd go to slide number 2, I'd like to ask Janelle Nichols of the Public Health Foundation staff to go over some of the housekeeping items that are associated with the GoToWebinar software that we're using today. So Janelle, would you tell us how to use it?
Thanks, Bill. Sure can. So as you may have all heard, you attendees that are logged on today are muted. If you are using your phone to listen in on the webinar today, please choose the phone call option, which is under the audio section of your control panel. And if you are using your computer mic, please choose the computer audio option. We've uploaded the slides today in the control panel for you to download if you'd like. These are available in the handout section of your control panel. At any time throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit questions or comments via the questions section on the control panel. And this webinar is being recorded and will be archived, and we'll make sure that the archive is available following the webinar. Back to you, Bill.
All right, terrific, Janelle, thank you. If you go to the next slide, please. I know that some of you on the call are new to us, so I want to take just a moment to fill you in a bit about our learning community background. We are a product of the Council on Linkages between academia and public health practice, and we're staffed by folks from the Public Health Foundation. And as you can see on the slide, the Council is made up of 22 national public health organizations listed on the right. And they include the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and Human Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA. Our funding, for which we are very thankful, comes principally from the Centers for Disease Control. Now, we have 3 major goals that are listed on the left-hand side of the slide. All of them are related to linking academia and public health practice. So the next slide, Janelle. We're often asked just what an academic health department actually is. A wide range of agencies, institutions, and arrangements are involved in these partnerships, making a tight definition difficult and probably unnecessary. This slide contains some of the phrases we use to describe these arrangements, and we present them here in hopes they may be helpful to you in understanding what it is we're talking about and perhaps useful in your discussion with others. The next slide, please. The Council on Linkages is perhaps best known for its work to develop core competencies for public health workers. But the Academic Health Department Learning Community is one of our newer efforts. The learning community is now in its 7th year, and our activities are noted in the bulletin points on this slide. Since the slides are easily available to you, I'm certainly not going to read them. But if you look them over and you're not a member and you think you'd like to join us, we'll have information for you about how to do that at the end of this session. And on this next slide, you'll find some fast facts, if you will, for you about the learning community itself. Okay. Then today's speaker is Dr. Grisel Torres from the School of Public Health at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And today she'll be speaking with us in her role as Director of the Coordinating Center for Public Health Practice at that institution. So Dr. Torres, if you would, please go ahead.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, staff from the Public Health Foundation. Today, I want to share our journey in establishing the Academic Health Department. Could you advance the next slide, please? Thank you. Between the University of Illinois at Chicago and the Chicago Department of Public Health. To put this in context, we are a public state institution in fiscal crisis. in my opinion. As a state, we've not had a budget in 2 years. I think we've had some stopgaps here and there, but for the most part, we're going in our 3rd year without a budget, and the university has been operating mostly off of reserves. And I put first in quotes because, truth be told, that's what we believe here at School of Public Health. I and Chicago Department of Public Health and the School of Public Health, you know, we're sure that there are many other health departments and community-based organizations working with various academic institutions, but we don't believe that there are any official formalized partnerships that include the scopes of resource and knowledge exchange that we're going to present here in Illinois. Oh, it's working. Thank you. Okay. For the overview, I just want to preface by saying I don't like to read directly from the slides, so I'll let you read, but I'm going to highlight major points or things that stood out for me as I tried to implement the academic health department relationship from the university end. So I do want to focus on getting into the hows in establishing the partnership and really describe where the School of Public Health is heading in terms of future partnerships. We've always heard that champions, especially at the leadership level, is key, and in this particular case, it was true to form. I will start by saying that the leadership and vision was strong at the School of Public Health. The Dean's Office initiated in 2011 a strategic plan and approved it in 2013. And the school had identified several areas of priorities, which included service, practice, and partnership enterprise that would contribute to the academic and practice excellence and community engagement. And what they envisioned was sort of becoming integral and a seamless partner recognized within the public health practice systems and the community. They envisioned providing a continuum of knowledge and skills, fostering leadership, innovation, and vision in local public health practice, and a shared vision at that. They envision adapting and contributing to the changing environment with, using critical evaluation and a systematic approach to scholarship and professional development. They envision refining, promoting, strengthening research in areas of excellence, new public health challenges, and translational science. And finally, they believe that what they were envisioning was enhancing an interdisciplinary and collaborative research team that led sustained impact, and not just research, but also scholarly public health practice research. After the strategic plan, they initiated a steering committee made up of faculty that was established within the school to guide this implementation of this broad vision. And quickly, the committee agreed that they needed a coordinating center for public health practice to oversee and manage and implement this school-wide. So a year later, they established the office, and then the year after that, they hired the director, me. But during this period before they hired me, they had identified a whole lot of areas that they expected this office to do. This office of one person and maybe a 0.5, which is the associate dean. So when I came in to manage the expectations, and when I mean by managing, there was a lot that they were putting on this office. I engaged the Public Health Practice Committee to prioritize their areas, and these were the areas that they wanted to address school-wide, which was developing a practice-based research agenda, addressing practicum issues. Data sharing was at the heart of a lot of their issues, continuing education and assessment and evaluation. And going into this, I knew there was no real way in addressing any of the areas, including the priority areas, without some mechanism of partnership engagement. And so that sort of underlined where I was heading with this. I will also mention as a side note that the campus, the University of Illinois, the Chicago campus, followed suit in September 2016, identifying community engagement as one of the 4 areas that would define UIC in their new role. So, it was clear to me that we needed to move towards community engagement, and we knew that we wanted to move away, not move away, but move beyond project-based types of opportunities, because once the funding dries up, so does the project. And we didn't want to just focus on student field placement. So one of the first places I started was with the Public Health Foundation and their website and their resources. And then I signed up for mentoring so that I can begin exploring the academic health department and other academic practice partnerships. And meanwhile, every step of the way, I was involving the Public Health Practice Steering Committee members. They were part of the shared decision-making. They were part of my buy-in, and they represented different aspects of the school in terms of divisions, programs, units, institutes, other centers. And so I needed to involve them along the way. In addition, I had to scope, learn. I've never worked in academia before. This was really my first time. So I had to really learn and scope the resources that were available, not just within the school, but campus-wide, and figuring out its internal, external facing infrastructure, their resources, and their policies. And yes, that included the library, web applications, online, in-person trainings, course audit, and the like. So in the beginning of this process, I was operating from the center's perspective that, I was under the impression that I was working within this work triangle that just involved the public health partners, the practice steering committee, and campus school resources. And I called it sort of a love triangle because we all had this desire to be together, but there were important aspects in each of these relationships that I had to figure out in terms of forging them. And in terms of the Public Health Practice Steering Committee, they needed constant communication, transparency. I had to continuously reinforce the buy-in. I had to, more importantly, develop a pitch, and I had to identify how this partnership was important for them. It was one thing to say, yes, we want to engage with partner, but it was another thing to sort of spell it out for them in terms of what the relationship is. And I also had to identify for them what was in it in terms of the positioning the school and venturing into the academic health department. With CDPH, the Chicago Department of Public Health, I not only had to, I thought it was just enough to make the sell, this is what we can do for you, but I learned pretty quickly they were more concerned, well, what do we have to do for you? I had to really sit down and think about, well, what's in it for them, as well as what we think we're going to get out of them. And that was equally important. And we knew that we were moving into uncharted territories with no personal reference of our own. We had never established an academic health department here at the school or any type of formalized detailed partnership like this one. Meanwhile, I was working with school campus infrastructure and learning their processes, the way they do things and why they do it a certain way, and how do I do it with and stay compliant, but yet looking for loopholes to facilitate the partnerships. For example, extending library access, because that had not really been done in a formal way, or at least in a contractual way. I would meet with different offices, such as a library, and I'd learn their current access process, their funding mechanisms, their policies, and then figure out how to broach, that conversation of, but what if I wanted to do this, X, Y, and Z, and still remain compliant? And I'm going to talk about a little bit later why compliance is important. And then came general counsel, and they really threw a monkey in the wrench. Their focus is in risk management altogether, reducing the liability and any foreseeable liability. And I have to honestly say, if you've ever talked to an attorney, they can find liability in anything, especially if they don't understand what you're trying to do. So I had to take a step back and pause the other 3 areas and triangulate the general counsel midway in my activities. I had to set up informational meetings. I had to provide briefs for them, templates that I drew down from the Public Health Foundation. I even shared the Public Health Foundation website so they could see I'm not making this up and that this is being done nationally, and then engage in discussions where they had areas of concern and how we can actively together address them using their expertise. I will honestly say that once they understood what I was trying to do and how I was going about it, it made things much smoother, much smoother. From the beginning to the end, when I submitted my Academic Health Department agreement with the Chicago Department of Public Health for final review, they turned it around in less than 2 weeks, which is notoriously fast for our bureaucratic dinosaur system that we have here in this institution. And I will say that even some of the attorneys thanked me. You know, some of them had said, you know, we get all sorts of agreements and contracts, and we have to look at these stuff, and no one tells us why they're doing this or gives us any background, and we're always trying to figure out what's trying to be done and what's the intent. And I essentially made their job easier. And I remember one attorney said, moving forward, make my job easier, and I will make your what you want happen within the realms of my capability. So I would encourage you that as you're exploring academic health department, establishing that in your setting, don't underestimate the need to step back and allow others to grasp what you're trying to do and what is needed to make the academic health department happen, and advocating for your needs. I mean, one of the things that I advocated strongly was simple language. I just cannot handle the here to, therefore, there, how, you know, all that heavy legal jargon. And I told them, when I engage with partners, they don't get this. Some of them don't get this stuff. So can we just keep it in layman's terms? And, you know, much to my surprise, they agreed without any problems. They're like, sure. I will say that underlying all of this is that all of these activities are in fact facilitators of the process, believe it or not. And I'll talk a little bit more about how they really do speed up your process a little bit later. In terms of barriers, well, there's not to say that there were not any barriers along the way. I mean, there still are. But these were the sort of the 3 common areas and sub-issues that actually kind of overlap across the board. First, keep in mind that the coordinating center had no funding, so I was essentially hustling with no funds. And we were cash strapped, and we have no budget. So my sales pitch was the resources that the school had. And so that's why it was really important to investigate those policies and figure out the loopholes to provide that external facing opportunity for our practice community. I sometimes felt like I was courting our partners as a potential suitor with no JOB, basically no funds. So it was really important to highlight what we can make available for them in terms of resources. Whether you're reaching out strategically to a partner or just new partners with no previous history, because I've done both, it really takes a lot of time, and building rapport with community partners is never an overnight bond of any sort. So time is a big, big factor, and I always have to mitigate the perspective here in the School of Public Health that, you know, what in the world is she doing? And it's hard to convey, you know, this stuff takes time. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. It requires open communication, it requires patience, and it requires you to temper everyone else's impatience. And in many cases, until the agreement was signed, I had to extend some good faith efforts on my part on behalf of the school. So for example, with CDPH, I had initiated library access without the agreement in place. The agreement had not been signed, and we were still negotiating different aspects of it, but it was a good faith effort on our part, ensuring and still doing that and ensuring proper protocols, that I was following internal protocols. But it was that extending that olive branch to say, we're serious about this, please join us. I also learned that administratively, management was different from my past employment experience. Before coming to UIC, I was accustomed to the top-down approach, but UIC, in terms of management, has a shared governance model, and this is so new to me. So the dean's office does not necessarily make unilateral decisions, which is what I'm used to in my past employment. You know, the commissioner, the boss makes a decision, maybe with or without staff input. But at UIC, at the School of Public Health, the decisions are not unilateral. They're done with faculty and staff input and buy-in. And hence, this is what I call the multiple approval levels, because it's starting with the dean's office, and then I got to work with faculty, and then I got to work with staff, and then I got to work with divisions, and then I got to work with units and centers and institutes within the school. And if that's not enough, some of the programs within, and I'm just referring to the school only. I'm not even talking about campus-wide. So that is a big challenge overall. So in terms of the legal front, things are not perfect by all means. One of the sticking points that I still have with legal, and I'm going to embark in this conversation, but I'm not too comfortable with it, and I'm actually dreading it, is that we still have to contend with the high liability insurance requirements that they impose even in an academic health department agreement. And I feel that some of these requirements marginalize some of the smaller organizations or even health departments. I'm in the process now engaging a coalition of organizations that are very, very well recognized locally in terms of establishing an academic practice partnership, but they don't have a 501c3, and they don't plan on getting one, and they don't want a fiduciary agent. So I don't know how I'm going to execute this agreement, but that's my newest challenge, and obviously involving general counsel is key. So going into this, I realized that it's a journey, and large institutions sometimes move at a snail's pace. And during this snail's pace, it's critical to just be transparent, to be open and honest, even when you don't know what you're doing, or just admit that you're still learning. There's a joke around here that I keep telling people, well, I'm new. Well, I'm almost 2 years into the job, so now people are telling me you can't use that anymore. So I think that's kind of funny, because I've used it as far as I could. You know, to push the academic health department agenda, I've had to shoulder the burden, and I guess I would encourage others to do that. Make it easier for others in order for you to negotiate what you need to make that academic health department happen. Like I did with the attorneys. I basically spoon-fed them everything, and then they sort of came around, was like, oh, okay, I think we can do this. So it saved us a lot of time and aggravation. In terms of aligning strategically, I would say that, you know, it was easier for me to get buy-in externally, you know, within the school and outside of the school, meaning campus-wide, because I was able to work in the angles of the strategic plan. It fit within the school and the campus-wide vision, and so it wasn't hard to sell it under this umbrella in this particular case. Well, okay, so I'll talk about creating a safe space. So this is my mentor, Amy Lee. She was assigned to me from the Public Health Foundation. And I really encourage you finding that safe space, some way to process all the stuff that's in your head. She was my space to figure out without any judgment all the swarm in my head. And every particular, what I thought was a barrier was really not a barrier, really exploring from a practice standpoint, how can I make this happen within this academic institution? And she also helped me look for loopholes, you know, and how to use different folks in different offices to engage in those loopholes. And even though loopholes come across as negative, it really does help others understand and encourages discussion on from the perspective on how something could work rather than what's not going to work. Along the way, I learned not to burn any bridges. It turned out that this was a popular notion in our campus, so folks inside the school and outside of the school became my allies, and I was ready to call on them when I needed them to make a sell or a pitch at a new office. So you'd be surprised on sort of the folks that you interface in between can be your allies later on. As a result, many campus offices are wondering how in the world I made this happen, and they want in, which leads me to sort of managing expectations carefully and respectfully. I would encourage you to not to overpromise and be clear about your institution's needs and what's in your capacity. And in a later slide, I'll share about the other side of sort of managing expectations. So instead of giving like this broad list and detailed list of what the scope of agreement was, I decided to just do some bullet points and some pictures. This is probably more akin to my ADD, but our agreements are approved for 10 years. So CDPH and the School of Public Health took the PHF templates, and we kind of narrowed down which ones we thought we liked, and we used that as a springboard to create what was our own. And then using track changes, we began to negotiate those areas, being clear about what each other's needs are. I will also add that we purposely let some items kind of broad and vague because we were clear not to spell out nitty-gritties. We didn't know how the implementation process was going to pan out or how it's going to work out or how it's going to unfold. And we certainly, once you get into the nitty-gritty, it was the Chicago Department of Public Health's attorney who advised us not to do that because then we may have to go through city council. And if you're familiar with Chicago's structure, we have like 30-something aldermen that have, you know, and we really didn't want 30-something aldermen weighing in on an academic health department, so we kept it as general. But we were clear that overall the spirit was in the implementation. So one of the things we negotiated was developing an advisory team that each party would have, and they would serve as the implementation team to manage all aspects of the implementation, whether it was applied field experience, workforce development, resource and knowledge exchange, joint research publication and grant applications, and other administrative matters. We were clear, myself, the school, and the Chicago Department of Public Health, that they wanted to move beyond the project base and student field experience. I mean, in terms of student practicums altogether, we have a separate process for that. But so the way that we were able to do this and following university guidelines is that I was able to, the coordinating center was able to sponsor the Chicago Department of Public Health as a partner affiliate. And that allowed us to create what we call in our world at UIC a net ID. The net ID is your creme de la creme, your online ID, and it gives you access to many other web resources. So our partners, our Chicago Department of Public Health team, do have net IDs, and as a result, they have similar access and privileges as faculty, staff, and students. We also had decided that, you know, we host as a school many symposiums, webinars, brown bags, free conferences, and so we've added the Chicago Department of Public Health team to our various listservs so that they have access in real time to these opportunities. And this could address some of their larger issues, not issues, but some of their larger concerns around workforce development strategies. This is important given that CDPH is FAB accredited and they need to find ways to make available professional development opportunities as part of their workforce development plan. And just to share how the school may be able to impact some of their organizational accreditation needs, in my orientation meeting with the Chicago Department of Public Health, I had learned that they no longer had the learning management system. So because of their affiliation status with SBH, they will now be using our online Qualtrics survey to assess their workforce. I suggested that they now have access to Lynda and Skillport as part of their workforce development training, and they can use that to meet some of their staff training needs. Essentially, then I was asked to, participate in their workforce development committee. So this type of exchange would actually be an example of meeting an organizational need, an example of personnel exchange. Again, we're still in the zygote stages of implementation. So we'll see what happens next. Could you advance the next slide? All of a sudden, my keyboard is not working. Thank you. Here's some other helpful tips in terms of negotiating the agreement. Again, I can't stress the importance of open communication enough, and I encourage using track changes as a way to manage the conversation, intent, the language in your document, and involve legal counsel early on. There's a lot of stuff that they can iron out, give you language that is makes it easy to approve, and it won't halt the process or slow it down. And I would encourage you to realize that setting up the agreement and engaging in this type of exchange is also a way of building rapport. I mean, I wouldn't underestimate the process itself. It's a form of building rapport and building your allies sort of along the way. One of the things that I had to do is manage my own expectations. When I was engaging with my contact person at CDPH, I wanted to include everything under the sun, and she kept holding me back. And basically, I learned in the end that, you can't cover everything under the sun in this agreement, but you can use it as a framework, as an opportunity to expand in other areas. So when she shared that with me, I had to take a step back and, okay. And then I realized, oh, okay, so for us, in terms of the university perspective, this is an academic, this is a master agreement, which it will be easier for us to, since it's already in place, to process MOUs, additional agreements, contracts, anything that we want to spell out under this master umbrella that we have. And I will say that finally, much of the implementation is still unknown. So the Chicago Department of Public Health and the school, we went into this knowing that the spirit of the partnership will be in the implementation. Much of it is unknown for both of us. So hopefully in a year we can report more. I would encourage you to celebrate not just the big wins, but also the small wins. The School of Public Health made a big deal by creating, campus news and targeting national public health news outlets and local news outlets such as, WTTW, which is our public service station here. But in the middle of the picture is, actually Dr. Julie Merida, who's CDPH's commissioner, and Dean Paul Brandt Ralph, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He's now the inaugural dean at Drexel. And we established an inaugural signing, so it was a really big deal for the School of Public Health and campus-wide. The chancellor and the vice chancellor was also quoted in a lot of the media, and they were happy that we were moving in this direction. Could you advance my slide? It's not working. Thank you. Again, in terms of partnership direction, we are very early in the inception of the academic health department implementation activities. And, I just finished the initial orientation with my CDPH counterpart in navigating campus resources as a start. And I learned it was a bit overwhelming, so I have to rethink how to simplify this further. Imagine not having much and then all of a sudden being pointed to so much and not sure if you're going to be able to use it or how to use it. So I have to work on my orientation to this big campus and some of the resources they have. But CDPH has already selected their members, and we at the School of Public Health are finalizing our implementation team. And once those members are in place, we can begin with our charter and identifying some initial priorities. From the school's perspective, there's still much to be done, and a lot of it is going to be trial and error and adjusting along the way. Next slide. Well, okay, so the Coordinating Center has engaged with many partners, and not just the Chicago Department of Public Health. And this is not all inclusive, or it's not all, the entire list. The school, I will say, the School of Public Health is very clear and envisions a robust and diverse representation of community partners. And the Coordinating Center is learning that not everyone is interested in an academic practice partnership. So I'm triaging accordingly based on what partners think they want and need. But for those who are interested in a more formalized and a long-term partnership, we are extending the same scope of agreement and also including nuances specific to the organization. So even though this is a presentation on academic health departments with the Chicago Department of Public Health, from that experience, I'm learning how to develop other partnerships. So for example, with SUHI, which is the Sinai Urban Health Institute, which is the third little box. Currently their contract is under general counsel review. One of the things that was clear to them is that they no longer wanted to miss out on NIH grants. And as you know, most science grants require faculty affiliation. So we're extending that UIC affiliation that will allow SUHI to go after NIH grants in partnership with UIC. We also have a formal academic practice partnership solidified with the Public Health Metropolitan Institute of Chicago, which is PHIMC for short, and an orientation starts next month. So we're also in current discussions with the Cook County Department of Public Health and the Illinois Department of Public Health in establishing academic health departments. IDPH is on board and initial advisory team is being established. So one of the things that we're selling to the Chicago Department of Public Health is that this is not mutually exclusive, and they're welcome to partner with any other university that they would like, and as they see fit, and we encourage that. Next slide. So here are some of the additional tips, or what I like to call unintended consequences. As other allied health sciences colleges are getting wind of what the School of Public Health is doing, they're asking me to just add their name to our agreement. We've not done this, and I'm still unclear what this means for us as a school and to our partners. But yeah, they'll just call and say, hey, could you just add our name to your next agreement? So I thought that was interesting. I've had other campus colleges ask me, how in the world did you do that, and why are you not doing this for the entire campus? Again, managing sort of expectation. Because other colleges ask, that also means that they do look into it and even have engaged me in conversation about how familiar they are with policies and follow up to see if I'm following them. So hence why it's important to follow protocol. I met with the library dean, and after achieving an agreement to extend access to partner affiliates, I had the wherewithal to get it in writing. Actually, I think our senior associate dean asked for it in writing. And boy, that was a saving grace, because when news hit campus, I got an email from the library. And clearly they didn't remember certain things. So, but needless to say, what's important is that we're in good standing. So I encourage you to get things in writing. As you set up an academic health department or any other type of partnership, the expectation is that you become sort of the clearinghouse of sorts. So be prepared to get hit with tons of questions and reviews, and address the known and the unknown, because all of a sudden you're perceived as the go-to person because you actually made this happen on campus. And in terms of overtaxing our partners, this is just a general concern I have. With the implementation being new and we don't know all the points and how many times we will be needing our partners or in what ways, everything is still unknown. This is something that I constantly maintain a temperature check on. I don't want to overextend our community partners where they're like, oh God, what did we get into? Next slide. So in terms of our academic health department partnerships with the Chicago Department of Public Health and our future partners as a school, we want to figure out what is the best interface. And so I have a few slides just to give you a general idea of where we're at in terms of the interface, but we really want to figure out the best way to identify, prioritize, and address each other's needs without missing opportunities for anyone. And essentially, as a school, we really want to embed public health practice school-wide and bridge the practice and research communities. And we want CDPH and other partners to serve as an official external body of sorts within the school. So we are exploring different conceptual frameworks to operationalize how we can bring the two together, given that, you know, the setting that we're giving in, our current organizational structure and culture, et cetera. And you'll see that each frame describes how different, a slightly different tweak. And in this particular framework, we're encouraging a form but a bidirectional relationship. Next slide. In this sort of conceptual framework, you know, the form is changed on the school's end, and it's increasing in a unilateral fashion. Next slide. In this third framework, it's completely linear. So again, this is a stage that we're in. I'm working with the Public Health Practice Steering Committee to sort of decide what is the best interface, as well as getting feedback from our partners. The challenge here that it is really difficult to get UIC staff and faculty to agree on anything. And the idea that this is a quality improvement opportunity to that we can adjust as we learn from the implementation, that kind of fluidity is a hard sell in academia. In practice world, we're okay with that, right? Because what doesn't work this time, we can try something different rather quickly. We're very responsive. But in academia, it's not like that. Well, not for now. Next slide. So in my final slide, overall, it's clear that the School of Public Health wants to co-partner and engage with the practice community. In terms of partnership activities, these are the areas that are very important to us. We want co-application of grants, evaluation, and research. We want to develop a practice-based research agenda. We don't want to do that alone. We want to do that with the community, with community partners, with public health practice leadership representation. We want co-teaching. We want classroom practice. We also want to define what is success and find ways with our partners to measure it. But ultimately, the school wants to move towards leading with the public health practice community. Next slide. Oh, well, so this comes to a conclusion on my presentation. I hope you identified some takeaways from my presentation, and thank you for listening.
Terrific, Giselle. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. Let me ask now if we have any questions from the audience.
Hi, Bill. This is Kathleen. We have one question and one comment so far in the chat box, so maybe we can just start with those. And as a reminder, please feel free to continue typing your questions and comments in the questions box, or if you'd like to speak, you can just raise your hand and Janelle will be able to unmute your line. So I'll start with a question from Magali, first of all. Griselle, she asked if everyone at the Chicago Department of Health has net IDs or only a few people. How did you set that up?
Good question. It's not everyone. We can't support almost, 600 and something employees. But we, in the agreement, identified key positions, key staff and key positions. And so anyone falling under those titles would get access to libraries. So right now, talking with the Chicago Department of Public Health, I think they want to go up to 35, I think, or 30. But nonetheless, it's not just a handful of people, and it's definitely not the entire health department. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. And the other comment we've received so far was from Amy Lee, actually, and she just says, bravo on your efforts, Grizel. You were able to make this happen by believing it can happen and following through. So really emphasizing the importance of following through. So
She was so
congratulations.
patient with me. Every time I talked to her, I felt like I was rambling a mile a minute.
And it looks like someone has their hand raised, Janelle?
Yeah. Olu, I see that you have your hand raised. I'm going to unmute you now and feel free to ask your question or make your comment, so you should be good.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very, very informative and very enlightening. And I'm so happy that, you know, we have opportunity for this. Now, I just wanted to ask, you know, how did you meet each other? What were the criteria, or what criteria do you have now for who you want to or who you can partner with?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, in terms of the Chicago Department of Public Health, okay, so I have to come clean and say that I used to work for the Chicago Department of Public Health. I was there 17 years before coming to UIC. So I knew leaving the health department that was something that was on their radar and they were actually interested in. So when I came here to UIC, I will say that it was easy to leverage that relationship that I had with them to make this happen. It also helped that the Chicago Department of Public Health was already working with UIC in different other things, and they already had some relationship, and so forging that was a little easy to make this happen. Now, the other partners that I engaged, like Suhi, I honestly, I never had a relationship with them, but they had a relationship with UIC, and when they found out about the academic health department, they approached me and asked, they wanted to play in the sandbox, can we let them in? We don't have a criteria. Our only criteria is, can you think about what our needs are and you think you're open to that, and can we meet your needs? And that's basically where we're at in terms of criteria. There's nothing, it's a fluid process. And I will say that there are other organizations that I've reached out to and then still am engaging in conversations, like the Lake County Health Department. They're interested. They're not sure. They're more concerned about what's in it for us. So, you know, we're working through that. Peoria County Health Department, which is sort of a microcosm of Chicago, has already turned in their version of their agreement. But I didn't reach out to them. They reached out to us. They needed help because of the gun violence, and I was their interface, and I gave them some resources. Again, I extended a good faith effort on my part to meet them at their needs, and then I went in for the sort of kill and say, hey, you're interested in this, and then we went out there and we explored that. It doesn't happen overnight, and you have to be willing to engage in multiple conversations. So
okay. Thank you very much. I was very much kind of intrigued because, you know, we had an agreement with a school system, and I was wondering whether it's actually better to attach the school system to the health department, and then our own relationship with the health department will be our relationship with the school will be through the health department. You know, with regard to school violence, health. In fact, after we started working with them, there was an outbreak of mumps, and it was among, you know, that group. That group was the epicenter, and that really supported what the health department was trying to do. So I was, you know, kind of wondering about what kind of model you have, because I saw your really nice models, and about how to engage others that are not necessarily public health per se or a health department per se.
So yeah, we are engaging non-health departments in part of our practice effort. Again, our underlying goal is strengthening the public health system. And as we already know, the public health system is more than just the health department. So we're very much open to that. But again, whether you're reaching out or they're reaching out to you, whether there's a pre-existing relationship or it's brand new, the conversations are slow and they're more exploratory in nature, and you have to be patient with that. And it's, you know, by the time you reach the point where you think you want to engage in a conversation, in that partnership, it's still not going to happen overnight. So it is a slow process. And again, like I said, I was a hustler. I hustled. If there's any meaning to that, I mean, I didn't have money. I come from a cash-strapped public university, but the world thinks of us as rich. And I had to temper with a lot of misconceptions and perceptions and really understand what's available in our school structure.
Thank you very much. This is exciting.
Great, thank you. And we've got a couple more questions in the chat box. This first one that I have here, I think is a good follow-up to what you've just been discussing. So maybe if you have any additional words with this particular twist on it. The question from Laura Valentino says, any advice on the flip side? I'm an academic affairs coordinator at a health department, and we have affiliation agreements with 3 schools within our large public university in town, 3 private universities, and 2 community colleges. How do we choose who to partner with and not isolate or alienate our other academic partnerships?
Ooh, I will tell you, you should partner with everyone. I guess I'm a, I don't know what the proper word is, but I'm a glutton, I guess is the word. But I would encourage you to partner with everyone. I would pick the route that seems a little easiest, right? That you think that solidifying this partnership will go through. But from the very get-go, I was straight up with CDPH that this is not mutually exclusive. And the reason why is that we want to partner with different organizations for a variety of reasons. And we have our reasons, and it's important for them to realize that they don't want, as a health department, and they were really clear too, they didn't want to be mutually exclusive either. They wanted to establish other health department academic status affiliations with other universities, and they're more than welcome to do that. And that only increases, from the health department standpoint, their affiliation statuses and their opportunities to engage in different activities. I would discourage, you know what, there's no one way, right way of doing things in my book. So if you want to partner with one, go be it. But if you don't want to and you want to keep it open from the get-go, I'd be honest and transparent about that. This isn't a mutually exclusive relationship. There's something that you have to offer. We have something to offer, and I think that's the basis of your exchange from there. I really hope that answers your question.
She says, thank you so very much. That was very helpful. I appreciate you sharing your expertise. So I guess, yes, it does answer the question.
Oh, good.
We have another question here from Magali. What is staff from the Chicago Department of Public Health offering to UIC? Staff to lecture at University of Illinois Chicago courses, staff to get interns, people to write grants for joint projects. When I was at a Department of Health, I could see so much I could get from academia, but how much can academia, in this instance UIC, get from a health department? It seems like this is progress so far, question mark.
So yeah, well, hi Magali, how are you? I know Magali. You know, I will say we are new in our inception, but what we do know, what we want from the School of Public Health is the opportunity for one to co-apply on grants, to co-evaluate, to do co-research, to be part of that shared decision-making model when it comes to public health in our community. And although it's not spelled out how that's going to happen, we know that that's our end goal. And as long as they're willing to afford that opportunity to us to co-apply with grants, that's important to us. As you know, in academia, faculty is not going to necessarily, jump in without some kind of funding. I mean, that's just the way the ball rolls here in academia. It's slightly different. So this is extremely important to them. They also want to see a practice-based research agenda, and we put that in our agreement language that, that they would develop an agenda that is important, that our faculty can then follow up with appropriate research to inform that. What we want is co-teaching. We have been doing surveys with our students, while they're here in school and post-graduation, and we can't stress the importance of, praxis. Being able to apply the concept beyond the theory is critical, and having real-world opportunities come to our classroom or provide project opportunities for our students, or coming in and sharing that perspective as a guest lecturer goes a long way in terms of moving beyond the theory for our students. So for us, that's critical. We also have our own safe requirements. We have to have community input, but we're choosing to formalize it in a much more structured way here within the school. It will be a formal process within the school. So that's what we're getting out of it. And we've made that clear to all of our partners who want to engage with us in this formal academic practice agreement.
Great, thank you. And Magali also says thank you, and that it's great to hear from you. I know we're getting close to time here. I want to leave a couple minutes for Bill at the end, but before we do that, does anyone else have any final questions or comments they'd like to share?
This is Bill. I might have one quick one.
Go for it.
So, do you have, in your affiliation agreement, do you make room for faculty appointments for practitioners in any way?
What we did was include a framework for that opportunity to happen within the current guidelines of university structure as it is. So yes, that opportunity is there, and they'll have to follow that protocol, but that's not to say that as a result of the academic health department relationship, that conversations are now occurring not just within the school, but even campus-wide on how do we provide, how do we create a track that is specifically for partners, a clinical track that's valued and respected. So now larger conversations are occurring as a result of the academic health department, and faculty are sort of talking about that and thinking about that. So we currently have a traditional route, but we're also looking at some non-traditional routes as well.
Great, thank you. And I guess, Kathleen, given the timing, that will have to be the last question. So let me just again thank Griselle for sharing her experiences with us. Really appreciate it a great deal. And for those of you who may have questions about how to begin or sustain academic practice partnerships in your own communities, you may find our mentorship program of interest. That's the program that Griselle used with Dr. Amy Lee to help her get started. If you have knowledge and experiences you're willing to share, please consider signing up with us as a mentor. And if you'd like some assistance, don't hesitate to check with us about becoming a mentee or using our listserv to make inquiries of learning community members. The next slide. I would also encourage you to take advantage of the additional resources available by accessing the tools we have on our website or connecting with our staff about questions you may have. You might also be interested in submitting questions you have about academic health departments to our recently inaugurated Ask the Expert column, and you'll task me to try to find an answer to your questions, but we'd be glad to hear from you. And then our last slide today in the webinar contains information about other resources available through the Public Health Foundation that might be of use to you. And again, please feel free to download the slides if you'd like to have a copy of this information permanently available. So once again, let me thank our staff for managing the webinar so well, and our presenter for sharing with us today, and all of you for taking an hour or so to be with us. We enjoyed your questions and your exchanges, and we'll look forward to having you on our next webinar sometime within the next several months, I believe. Very good. So thank you all, and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.